The world had crumbled around Elena with a swift, brutal efficiency. Just weeks ago, her life had been a tapestry woven with threads of aspiration and affection. She envisioned a future with Marcus, her boyfriend of 3 years, a quaint apartment filled with laughter, and a blossoming career in graphic design. Then, the unraveling began. It started subtly, a missed call, a vague excuse, a fleeting glance between Marcus and Sophie, her supposed best friend since childhood. Elena, always trusting, initially dismissed the gnawing suspicion, attributing it to stress from her demanding job. But the truth, when it struck, was a sledgehammer to her heart. She walked in on them, tangled together in her own bed, the intimacy of their betrayal a physical blow. The apartment, the place she had meticulously decorated, instantly became a tomb of shattered dreams. The emotional devastation was quickly followed by financial ruin. In her shock and grief, her performance at work plummeted. Her boss, a man with little patience for personal crises, had let her go. Without a job, she couldn't afford the rent on the apartment she now shared with ghosts of happiness. Marcus, unrepentant and cold, offered no solace, only demanded she pack her things quickly. Sophie, meanwhile, vanished from her life, a coward avoiding accountability. Within a month, Elena was homeless, jobless, and utterly alone, the bitter taste of betrayal clinging to her like a shroud. Her savings, once a comfortable cushion, evaporated under the weight of immediate expenses, leaving her with barely enough for a week's worth of food. The concrete jungle of the city, once a symbol of opportunity, now felt like an indifferent, crushing machine. She spent her days poring over job listings, each rejection letter a fresh stab at her diminishing hope. Each night, she curled up on friends' couches, feeling like an imposition, a burden. Her dreams, once vivid and inspiring, were now fragmented nightmares of being chased by shadows of her past. She needed an escape, a complete severance from everything that had gone wrong. One rainy afternoon, huddled in a coffee shop, nursing a lukewarm cup of tea, she stumbled upon an advertisement online that seemed almost too surreal to be real. Live-in assistant, archivist for remote historical estate. The pay was surprisingly generous, offering a fresh start, far from the city's reminders. The estate, Blackthorn Castle, was described as a monument of Gothic architecture, nestled deep within the Carpathian Mountains. The isolation was precisely what Elena craved. A place where no one knew her, where the echoes of Marcus and Sophie couldn't reach. She applied, her resume a hastily crafted testament to skills she wasn't sure she possessed. To her astonishment, she received an immediate response. The hiring process was brief, almost unnervingly so. A single video interview with a stern but impossibly handsome man named Adrian Blackthorn. His eyes, the color of ancient emeralds, seemed to bore into her very soul, a peculiar intensity in their depth. She felt a strange pull, a sense of familiarity she couldn't place. He hired her on the spot, without asking for references, without dwelling on her recent unemployment. It was as if he already knew everything he needed to know. The offer was simple: room, board, and a salary beyond anything she could have hoped for. All she had to do was catalog his vast, unorganized library and collection of historical artifacts. It was an offer she couldn't refuse, a lifeline in a storm. The journey to Blackthorn Castle was long and arduous. The train snaked through winding valleys, eventually giving way to a narrow, unpaved road that clawed its way up the mountainside. The landscape grew progressively wilder, the trees denser, the sky a perpetual twilight beneath the oppressive canopy. When the taxi finally deposited her at the foot of the castle, Elena gasped. It was magnificent, a colossal structure of dark stone, its turrets piercing the bruised sky like a crown of thorns. Gargoyles leered from every shadowed corner, and ivy, thick as an anaconda, embraced its ancient walls. A sense of unease, a prickling sensation on her skin, mingled with a thrill of Gothic adventure. This was no ordinary job. This was a plunge into the unknown. The heavy oak doors, studded with rusted iron, swung open silently as she approached, as if awaiting her arrival. A wave of cold air, carrying the scent of old leather and damp stone, enveloped her. Inside, the castle was a labyrinth of echoing halls and shadowed corridors, Lit primarily by the soft, flickering glow of antique gas lamps, dust motes danced in the sparse beams of light, making the very air seem alive with history. Adrian Blackthorne was waiting for her in the grand foyer, a figure silhouetted against the enormous stained glass window. He was even more striking in person, his dark hair falling just so across his high forehead, his features chiseled and aristocratic, almost too perfect to be real. His suit, a bespoke garment of dark velvet, only accentuated his imposing presence. When his emerald eyes met hers, a jolt, like static electricity, passed between them. He offered her a hand, his touch cool, almost cold, yet it sent a strange warmth coursing through her veins. "Elena," he said, his voice a low, resonant murmur. "You're finally here." There was something in his tone, a depth of emotion, a peculiar longing that transcended a simple greeting. It was as if he had been expecting her for a very long time. His gaze lingered on her face, a flicker of something akin to recognition, or perhaps a profound memory, crossing his features. "You look exactly as I remembered," he murmured, almost to himself, his lips curving into a ghost of a smile. Elena's brows furrowed. "Remembered me. But we've only just met." Adrian's smile vanished, replaced by a momentary shadow in his eyes. "Forgive me," he said smoothly. A turn of phrase. "I meant, you look exactly as I imagined from your photo." But the explanation felt hollow, unconvincing. The intensity in his gaze, however, remained. He led her through the vast, silent corridors to her chambers, a surprisingly cozy room with a roaring fireplace and a window overlooking a dense, ancient forest. The furnishings were antique, opulent yet comfortable, a stark contrast to her recent destitution. Later, after settling in, Adrian took her on a brief tour of the main floor. The library, her domain, was breathtaking, a multi-story chamber lined from floor to ceiling with countless volumes, some bound in fragile leather, others in cloth, all exuding the rich, earthy scent of aging paper. It was a bibliophile's paradise, a lifetime's work awaiting her. As they passed through a dimly lit gallery filled with ancestral portraits, Elena's breath hitched. On one wall, among the stern faces of centuries past, hung a portrait of a woman. Her hair, the same shade of auburn as Elena's, framed a face that was strikingly, uncannily identical to her own. The same high cheekbones, the same inquisitive eyes, the same delicate curve of the lips. The gown, a voluminous velvet creation from a bygone era, seemed to shimmer around the familiar form. Elena stared, transfixed, a shiver running down her spine. "Who is she?" Elena asked, her voice barely a whisper. Adrian paused, his gaze fixed on the painting, a profound sadness clouding his features. "Her name was Ilara," he replied, his voice thick with a raw, unspoken emotion. "My wife. She died many centuries ago." Elena felt a strange surge of inexplicable grief, as if she were looking at her own ghost. The resemblance was too perfect to be mere coincidence. The air in the gallery grew heavy, charged with an unspoken mystery. That night, sleep proved elusive. The castle, despite its size, seemed to breathe around her, the old timbers creaking, the wind sighing through the gaps in the stone. Strange sounds echoed from the deeper parts of the castle. She lay in her opulent bed, listening to the unfamiliar chorus of a truly ancient house. A melody, hauntingly beautiful and deeply melancholic, drifted from somewhere in the east wing, a section of the castle Adrian had explicitly forbidden her from entering. The music, played on what sounded like an antique harpsichord, was ethereal, almost otherworldly, weaving its way into the fabric of the night. It felt both familiar and utterly foreign, a lullaby of loss. Elena rose, drawn by an irresistible curiosity. She knew she shouldn't, knew Adrian's rules, but the music tugged at something deep within her, a whisper of forgotten memories. Each note resonated with a strange sorrow, a poignant yearning that echoed her own recent heartbreak, yet was centuries older. As she crept silently towards the sound, the melody grew louder, each chord a brushstroke painting a scene of ancient despair. The forbidden east wing beckoned, its secrets whispering promises of answers. The music pulsed, drawing her further into the forbidden wing. The air grew colder, heavier, imbued with an indefinable energy. She found herself outside a large, imposing door, the source of the melancholic harpsichord music. Hesitantly, she pressed her ear to the cold wood. The melody swelled, an agonizing lament, and then, abruptly, it ceased. A profound silence fell, broken only by the frantic pounding of her own heart. A strange wave of dizziness washed over her, and for a fleeting moment, images flashed through her mind. A moonlit ballroom, a man's face etched with pain, the cold touch of a hand. They were gone as quickly as they appeared, leaving her disoriented and shaken. She stumbled back to her room, the encounter leaving her unsettled, yet also deeply intrigued. The castle held secrets, and somehow she felt intrinsically tied to them. Over the next few days, the strange occurrences continued. She would catch glimpses of movement in the periphery of her vision, a fleeting shadow, a rustle of heavy fabric. But when she turned, nothing was there. The library, her assigned workplace, seemed to hum with unseen energy. Sometimes, as she catalogued ancient texts, she'd experience sudden, sharp headaches, accompanied by vivid, fleeting sensations. The scent of jasmine, the clang of a distant sword, the taste of blood. These weren't just memories. They felt like her memories, yet entirely alien. Her dreams, once a refuge from her waking sorrows, became a vibrant, often terrifying landscape. She dreamt of a man with emerald eyes, his touch both tender and possessive. She dreamt of opulent gowns, candlelit balls, and the intoxicating rush of illicit romance. But also, she dreamt of betrayal, of burning villages, of chilling goodbyes under a blood-red moon, and most unsettlingly, of dying. Not just once, but multiple times, each death a visceral experience that left her gasping for breath when she awoke. The taste of metallic blood on her tongue, the chill of approaching oblivion still clinging to her skin. She saw faces she knew she had never met, heard whispers in languages she didn't understand, and felt emotions so powerful they threatened to overwhelm her. These weren't nightmares. They were fragments of a life lived, a past she couldn't reconcile with her present. She knew these were not her dreams. They were too vivid, too coherent, too laden with a history that wasn't hers. Yet they felt intensely personal. The woman in the portrait, Elara, haunted her thoughts. The uncanny resemblance, the powerful emotions Adrian harbored, the strange occurrences, it all pointed to something far more profound than coincidence. One evening, Adrian found her in the library, staring blankly at a faded tapestry depicting a medieval hunt. Her expression must have betrayed her inner turmoil, for he approached her slowly, his gaze softening with concern. "Elena, are you all right? You seem troubled." Elena turned, her voice trembling slightly. "I'm not sure. I've been having these dreams, these memories that aren't mine. And the portrait of Elara, it's so unsettling. Why do I look exactly like her? And that music from the East Wing." She trailed off, searching his face for answers. Adrian's expression became unreadable, a complex mixture of sorrow, hope, and resignation. He led her to a secluded alcove, the air heavy with the scent of ancient parchment. He poured 2 glasses of ruby-red wine, though he only took a sip of his own. "There are things I must tell you," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "Things you may find impossible to believe, but you have a right to know." He paused, his gaze fixed on some distant point, his chest rising and falling slowly. "I am not merely the owner of this castle, Elena. I am its ancient guardian. I am a vampire." The words hung in the air, cold and shocking, yet strangely, a part of her had already suspected. The cold touch, the timeless eyes, the nocturnal existence, the unnatural grace. It all clicked into place. Elena stared, wide-eyed, a kaleidoscope of emotions swirling within her. Fear, disbelief, and a strange, undeniable thrill. He was a creature of myth, of legend, yet he stood before her, real and tangible, "And you, Elena," he continued, his voice laced with an almost unbearable tenderness. "You are Ilara, not a mere descendant, not a look-alike. You are her, reborn. Every few centuries, your soul finds its way back to me, into a new body, with no memory of our past. You are the love of my immortal life." He reached out, his cool fingers gently tracing the line of her jaw, a gesture that felt both ancient and brand new. The intimacy of his touch sent shivers down her spine, a strange yearning echoing deep within her. He spoke of their shared history, their intertwined destinies. He recounted tales of their first life together in the early 18th century. Adrian's voice wove a hypnotic narrative, painting vivid pictures of their past lives. He spoke of 1724, when he, a newly turned vampire, had first met a spirited noblewoman. Their love had been a whirlwind of stolen glances, secret rendezvous, and passionate declarations beneath the cloak of night. But their happiness was short-lived. A rival family, discovering Adrian's true nature, had hunted them down. He described her final moments in heartbreaking detail. Ilara, shielding him from a crossbow bolt meant for his heart, collapsing in his arms, her last breath a whispered declaration of love. He remembered her body turning to ash as the sun touched her skin, a tragic consequence of his vampiric curse spreading to her in their final embrace. The grief, the utter desolation in his voice, made Elena's own heart ache with a sorrow that felt deeply personal, almost as if she were reliving the trauma alongside him. Then, he spoke of their second life, in 1856, during the opulent Victorian era. She had reappeared as Eleanor, a fiercely independent artist, drawn to the solitude of the Carpathians. He had recognized her immediately, the soul behind the new eyes, the familiar warmth of her spirit. Their romance was a clandestine affair, hidden from a society that would not understand. But history, with its cruel repetition, had intervened. A plague swept through the region, and despite his vampiric attempts to protect her, Eleanor succumbed to the virulent disease. He recounted holding her feverish hand, watching the life drain from her eyes, powerless to stop fate's relentless grip. Her last words, he recalled, were a promise to find him again, a promise whispered with a dying breath. Elena felt a pang of profound loss, a familiar ache she couldn't explain, as if she herself had uttered those words. His voice dropped to a barely audible whisper as he spoke of their most recent life, in 1943, amidst the chaos of World War II. She had been Lena, a courageous resistance fighter, harboring refugees in a hidden cave near the castle. Their reunion was brief, intense, a beacon of light in a world plunged into darkness. But the war's brutality claimed her. A Nazi patrol, hunting down resistance members, discovered her hiding place. Adrian arrived too late. He found her, fatally wounded, her defiance still etched on her face, but her life ebbing away. Her final act was to distract the soldiers, buying him precious moments to escape. A selfless sacrifice that mirrored her first death. 3 lives, 3 different eras, 3 tragic endings, each time dying in his arms, each time leaving him alone to grieve, burdened by his immortality. "There is a curse," Adrian explained, his eyes burning with an ancient pain. "A powerful witch, whom I offended centuries ago with my youthful arrogance, placed it upon me. She decreed that I would find you, fall in love, and lose you, over and over again, until I understood the true meaning of humility and forgiveness. Each time you return, you are a blank slate. But as your memories of our past lives begin to surface, the curse activates. You die within days of fully remembering who you are." He took her hands, his touch cold, a desperate plea in his eyes. "I've tried everything, Elena, every ancient spell, every alchemical remedy, every desperate plea to break it, but the curse holds, and now, it's happening again." As he spoke, Elena felt a sudden, sharp pain behind her eyes, a dizzying surge of images. She saw herself, dressed in a sweeping velvet gown, dancing with Adrian in a moonlit garden. She felt the warmth of his hand in hers, the thrill of their forbidden love. Then, The scene shifted violently. The stench of smoke, the glint of steel, Adrian's desperate face, her own fear, and then a searing pain in her chest, the world spinning into darkness. The headache intensified, blinding her, and a metallic taste filled her mouth. A tremor ran through her body. These were not just dreams. These were full-blown memories, vivid and terrifying. The curse was indeed activating. Adrian watched her, his face a mask of agony, recognizing the signs he had seen countless times before. He had tried to keep her from remembering, had hoped that by changing her environment, by keeping her away from direct triggers, he might somehow delay the inevitable. But their connection was too strong, too ancient. The castle itself, filled with echoes of their past, was a constant reminder. Despite the terrifying revelation, despite the imminent danger, an undeniable, potent attraction flared between them. The stories he told, the raw emotion in his voice, resonated with a profound recognition within Elena. She felt a connection that transcended logic, a soul-deep pull towards this immortal man who claimed her as his eternal love. His touch, though cold, held a possessive tenderness that felt like coming home. She found herself drawn to him, seeking out his presence, craving his stories, his gaze. In his eyes, she saw not just a vampire, but a lonely soul, burdened by a love that brought only sorrow. The betrayal of Marcus and Sophie, once a gaping wound, now seemed distant, trivial in comparison to the cosmic tragedy unfolding around her. This was a love story spanning centuries, a fight against an ancient, relentless curse. She wanted to fight alongside him, to break the cycle, to save them both. One afternoon, while organizing an ancient section of the library, Elena stumbled upon a hidden compartment behind a loose bookshelf. Inside, tucked away from prying eyes, were several leather-bound journals. They were fragile, their pages yellowed with age, filled with elegant, looping script. The first journal was dated 1720s, signed Alara. The second, 1850s, Eleanor. The third, 1940s, Lena. Her own past lives, recorded in their own hand. She opened the oldest one first, her fingers trembling. The words on the page described her blossoming love for Adrian, her fear of his true nature, her desperate hope for a future. The entries were filled with a passionate intensity, a deep, unwavering devotion to the man she now knew was Adrian. She read about their secret meetings, their whispered vows, the terror of discovery. As she read, the memories flooded her, not in fragmented flashes, but in coherent, vivid waves. She remembered the scent of Adrian's skin, the texture of his velvet coat, the sound of his low laughter. She remembered the feel of the crossbow bolt tearing through her, the agonizing pain, the warmth of Adrian's tears on her face as she faded. The memories of each life crashed into her like an overwhelming tide. The exquisite detail in Alara's journal described her final moments, confirming Adrian's account. It was her own voice, her own thoughts, her own fears written on the page. She remembered her first death, the terror, the sacrifice, the bittersweet peace of dying in Adrian's arms, knowing her love was eternal. Then, she opened Eleanor's journal. The narrative shifted, reflecting a new personality, a new era, but the core emotion remained the same. An unbreakable bond with Adrian. She read about their clandestine rendezvous, the whispers of love in candlelit rooms, the agony of the creeping plague, her desperate promise to find him again as the illness consumed her. Finally, she opened Lena's journal. The stark, urgent prose spoke of war, of survival, of a brief, intense reunion with Adrian, a fleeting moment of joy in a world engulfed by fire. She relived her final stand, the cold barrel of a gun against her temple, her defiant last breath, a final thought of Adrian. Elena slammed the journals shut, her mind reeling, her body trembling. The weight of 3 lifetimes, 3 loves, 3 deaths, was too much to bear. Her head throbbed mercilessly, and her limbs felt weak, heavy, as if the life was already beginning to drain from her. She could feel the curse, a cold, insidious presence coiling around her heart, tightening its grip. The air grew thin, and her vision blurred. Adrian, drawn by a sudden, inexplicable sense of dread, rushed into the library. He found her slumped against the bookshelf, the 3 journals scattered around her. Her face ashen, her breathing shallow. Her eyes, though open, held a terrifying blankness, then flickered with recognition, a painful clarity, followed by an immediate wave of intense dizziness. "Elena!" he cried, his voice laced with terror. He knew what this meant. She had remembered. The curse was fully active. The final countdown had begun. With a desperate gasp, Elena's body went limp, collapsing into Adrian's waiting arms, the journals slipping from her grasp, the ancient secrets now fully unlocked within her mind. Elena lay in Adrian's arms, her breathing shallow, her pulse erratic. The memory-induced collapse was more severe than before. He carried her to her bed, his face a mask of profound despair. She was now fully aware of all 3 past lives, the joy, the sorrow, the tragic end of each. The clarity brought with it an overwhelming sense of déjà vu, a terrifying familiarity with the process of dying. As her health rapidly deteriorated, Adrian remained by her side, his usual stoicism shattered. He recounted the full story of the curse, the details he had previously withheld to protect her. The witch, Lyra, had been a powerful sorceress, her beauty matched only by her cruelty. Adrian, in his early centuries of immortality, had been reckless, arrogant, toying with her affections before discarding her for another. Her rage had been monumental, and her curse, a masterpiece of suffering designed to punish his perceived heartlessness. He was to find love, only to lose it, repeatedly, in the cruelest way possible. The only way to break it, she had declared, was careening through an unconditional act of forgiveness, freely given, for a wrong that transcends time and death, and only when the one cursed comprehends the true weight of their arrogance. A cryptic pronouncement that had haunted Adrian for centuries. Elena, despite her weakening state, listened intently. The gravity of the curse, the depth of Adrian's suffering, resonated deeply within her. She realized the witch's curse wasn't just about Adrian losing her. It was also about him learning profound humility. He had been so focused on his own loss that he hadn't fully grasped the requirement for forgiveness, not just from her, but also from himself, for his past arrogance. Her body was failing, the curse systematically shutting down her vital functions, but her mind, illuminated by the flood of memories, was sharper than ever. She knew this feeling, the slow fade, the inexorable pull towards oblivion. She had faced it 3 times before. This time, however, was different. She had the knowledge, the understanding of the curse. Adrian, consumed by grief, began to prepare for her imminent death. He spoke of releasing her, of allowing her soul to pass peacefully, knowing that clinging to her would only prolong her suffering. His voice was thick with despair, a profound sense of resignation. He was ready to let her go, believing it was the only act of love left to him. But Elena, though weak, refused to surrender. Her gaze, though clouded, held a fierce determination. She had lost her past lives, but she wouldn't lose this one without a fight. She had a memory, a fleeting image from Lena's journal, of a symbol, a peculiar glyph drawn in the margin next to a passage about ancient curses. With a supreme effort, she pointed to a shelf of arcane texts, her voice a mere whisper. The Grimoire of Lyra. Adrian, startled by her sudden clarity, retrieved the ancient, leather-bound book. Elena, using all her remaining strength, guided his hand to the page with the glyph. There, amidst forgotten spells and incantations, was a small, faded footnote, a fragment of the witch's own notes. It spoke of a loophole, a hidden condition. The curse could only be broken if the act of forgiveness came from the victim's soul, freely and fully, for Adrian's past transgressions, and if Adrian himself forgave his own arrogance and the witch's vengeful act, choosing love over despair. It wasn't enough for Elena to forgive Adrian. Adrian also had to forgive himself and the witch who cursed him. Acknowledging his past pride and accepting the cycles of pain as a path to growth. Only then, with dual forgiveness, could the curse unravel. It was an act of profound self-acceptance, a release of his own internal suffering. He had to understand that the curse was not just a punishment, but a transformative journey. Elena looked at him, her eyes pleading. You must forgive her, Adrian, and you must forgive yourself. Let go of the anger, the guilt. Choose love now more than ever. Adrian, recognizing the profound truth in her words, felt a shift within his ancient heart. The weight of centuries of bitterness and self-recrimination began to lift. He saw the witch not merely as his tormentor, but as an instrument of a painful, necessary lesson. He saw his own past arrogance not as an unforgivable sin, but as a youthful folly that had led him to true, selfless love. With renewed purpose, Adrian began to prepare the ritual. It was not one of magic or dark arts, but a simple, heartfelt declaration. He knelt beside Elena, taking her frail hands in his. Her body was growing colder, her breath barely a tremor. He looked into her eyes, which held the wisdom of 3 past lives and the fragile hope of this one. Ilara, Eleanor, Lena, Elena, he began, his voice choked with emotion. I ask for your forgiveness, for the arrogance that caused this pain, for the sorrow I have brought into your lives. And I forgive Lyra, the witch who cursed me, for she, in her rage, set me on a path to truly understand love. I forgive myself for my pride, and I accept the lessons of our journey. I choose love, always and forever, without conditions, without regret. As Adrian spoke, a soft, ethereal light began to emanate from Elena's body, swirling around them both. The chilling grip of the curse seemed to visibly loosen, like a serpent uncoiling itself. The pain in Elena's head subsided, her breathing steadied, and the coldness in her limbs began to recede, replaced by a gentle warmth. Elena, summoning her remaining strength, looked at Adrian, a profound love shining in her eyes. I forgive you, Adrian, she whispered, her voice growing stronger. I forgive you for everything, and I forgive myself for any anger I ever held. My love for you transcends time, and I choose it now, freely, without fear. A powerful surge of energy coursed through the room, a brilliant flash of light that enveloped them. The ancient castle seemed to hum with a newfound peace. When the light faded, Elena felt different. The memories of her past lives, the agony of their tragic ends, were gone, vanished. Her mind was clear, peaceful, but empty of the centuries of accumulated pain. The curse was broken. She was alive, truly alive, without the weight of a repeating destiny. Adrian stared at her, his emerald eyes wide with wonder, then relief, then an overwhelming joy. He was free, and she was saved. But the price was her memories. The witch's final sting, perhaps, was that she would live, but without the conscious knowledge of their shared history. He had found his humility and learned forgiveness, and she was spared. But their history together, for her, was a blank slate once more. 6 months later, the remote mountain air of Blackthorn Castle was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Elena was thriving. Her graphic design business, started anew with Adrian's subtle support, was flourishing, creating logos for local businesses and small online shops. The library was meticulously organized, a testament to her keen eye and unwavering dedication. Her life had a newfound rhythm, a quiet contentment she hadn't known before. The castle no longer felt eerie. It felt like home. Adrian was a constant, comforting presence. Their relationship had gently blossomed. He was attentive, kind, deeply patient, always there with a quiet understanding that seemed to anticipate her needs. He never pressed her for intimacy, never rushed their connection, allowing their love to unfurl at its own pace. They spent evenings by the roaring fire, discussing books, sharing stories of their day. Elena found herself captivated by his intelligence, his dry wit, and the profound, almost melancholic depth in his eyes. She felt a profound sense of safety and belonging with him, a feeling that surpassed any rational explanation. He was her best friend, her confidant, and slowly, irrevocably, Her heart was falling for him. This love, she realized, was different from anything she had ever known. It was pure, unburdened by past expectations, freely chosen. She knew nothing of the Alara, Eleanor, or Lena of centuries past, but she knew this Adrian, this gentle, complex man who looked at her as if she held the stars in her eyes. She chose him, every day, in every interaction, without the weight of a predetermined destiny, without the tragic echoes of previous lives. This love was hers, and hers alone. Yet, there were moments, fleeting and subtle, that hinted at a deeper connection, a resonance that transcended memory. Sometimes, as Adrian read aloud from an ancient text, a specific phrase or tone would evoke a strange, almost physical ache in her chest, a feeling of both joy and profound sorrow. When Adrian played the harpsichord, the same melancholic melody that had drawn her into the East Wing on her first night, she would find tears streaming down her face, a beautiful sadness she couldn't explain. She would catch herself humming a forgotten tune, a waltz from a bygone era, a melody she knew she had never learned. She discovered a peculiar fondness for jasmine, a scent she had never consciously encountered, but which felt inexplicably precious. Once, Adrian recounted a historical anecdote about a particular type of antique jewelry, and Elena, without thinking, described a specific, intricate clasp design from the 18th century that he knew only Alara would have known. Her eyes would sometimes linger on the portrait of Alara, a strange sense of familiarity washing over her, a feeling of looking into a mirror of the soul, not just a mirror of the face. She would sometimes wake from a dream with the faint scent of old books and Adrian's unique, subtle fragrance clinging to her, a sense of having been held and loved through the night. These were not memories, not conscious recollections of past lives, but whispers, echoes, a deep, cellular recognition that persisted beyond the veil of forgotten history. They were small signs, tiny threads in a vast tapestry, suggesting that while the curse had erased her memories, it could not extinguish the fundamental connection of their souls. This time, the love was built on a fresh foundation, a conscious choice, but underneath, the ancient roots remained, ready to grow stronger, deeper, and more enduring than ever before. Her new life with Adrian was just beginning, a testament to a love that had defied time, death, and a powerful curse, choosing to rewrite its own destiny, one beautiful, unforgettable moment at a time.